Out of everything going on today, you all want to argue about this? Oh, what has this world come to? I guess that's how it's going to be. So let's talk about it. Maybe we'll call it the 0 point. Okay, so Palworld versus Pokemon. Where do I even begin with this? Well, let me tell you a history about me and the Mon world. So my favorite Mon world is actually the Digimon world. For quite a number of reasons, I think that they get into more of the adult themes. Not in that way, you sick bastards. Um, Pokemon is purposefully and almost to a fault catering to anybody under the age of 10. So it's very cutesy, not a whole lot of relationships going on, and you have no idea what Ash Ketchum's father even looks like, let alone his relationships between his mother and his father, and almost any other relationship that he has is subject to question. Anyway, in the digital world, there's very many relationships, even in the first season. You had Tai and Kari, who had this weird dynamic of a brother being overly protective of his sister. You had Matt and TK, who had their parents divorced and they went their separate ways. And you had Matt on one side and you had TK on the other, and they rarely met. So, uh, and Sora, who was basically forced by her family to take over the family business and basically screw any academic achievements that she wanted to set. She's not allowed to do sports because it will cut into the business. Izzy was adopted, and they went through a whole heap of that and so much more in just the first season. After that, it kind of petered off, but that's basically what happened in the first season. So I'm much more of a fan of Digimon, but I'm very well versed in Pokemon. I've played most of the games. I didn't really feel I couldn't really play through most of the DS games. I didn't have a DS, didn't want to buy one. Never played Diamond Pearl, never played Black and White, never played Black and White 2. And then when X and Y came out, I went and bought a 3DS and played on the DS for the first time. So X and Y was my first foray back into Pokemon, and I enjoyed it. It had some good points and some bad points, but I did enjoy myself. And then I kept up with Pokemon ever since then. I played Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, and Scarlet and Violet, in which I have several hundred hours in both games. Mostly Violet, though. So I'm fairly well versed in the Pokemon world, despite me being a Digimon fanatic. I also know that there are a lot of Mon series that I haven't really gotten into. I know that there's like Yokai Watch, not really into that. I know that there was Monster Rancher, not really into that. Temtem was a thing, and I don't know, it was kind of just stick to Pokemon. I'm a busy guy, leave me alone. But I'm still familiar with the ideas of Mon creatures and how they work and how they're based off of. And the majority of Pokemon are actually based off of a lot of things. So here's what the internet has to say about Palworld. It is created by AI. I don't think that there's enough proof for that. I don't think that even if it was created with AI, nothing much that we can do. AI is coming. Now, we'll have a video on that at some point in time, too. AI is coming, possibly coming for your jobs, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. I use AI. I've used it myself. I'm going to continue using it because it is making my life a lot easier, being somewhat of a creative mind, but not creative hands. So I could care less about the AI generated aspect. The second thing is the animal abuse. I don't really care. I'm carnivore, and quite frankly, if I could teach my dog to open the door and go fetch the mail for me, I'd be a lot happier. And you can train a dog to open the door and do almost anything. You just had to be able to pay for it. So, what you gonna do, PETA? Not much. You gonna try to kill every service dog on the market? Good luck with that. So, the next one. It is a blatant, obvious, and so much so that Nintendo thinks that it is going to be able to sue Palworld because of copyright and trademark infringement. Oh boy. Oh boy. Pokemon Company or Palworld. I seriously hope that both companies may come across this video, at least an employee, because I do think Nintendo, Pokemon Company, you're barking up the wrong tree. And Palworld, Pocket Pair, please keep this in mind when you do go to court, because what I'm about to show you is how Pokemon has gotten away with it for decades. But Zero, how can you say that? This pal looks exactly like Cinderace, and this pal looks exactly like Wooloo, and the leaks say that there's coming out one that looks exactly like Mewtwo. Well, did you know that Mewtwo was based off of Frieza? Interestingly enough, Frieza came out in 1993, I believe. Pokemon was barely becoming a manga. And if they had this idea for a Mewtwo type creature, it probably came from this genetically engineered creature from Dragon Ball Z. So you can definitely tell that these two are comparable. Oh, what about Cinderace? Here's an interesting thought. Cinderace used to be a card capture card. This pal, this Cinderace, and this card are all color swaps. And by the way, I don't think that Pokemon has a monopoly on spiky haired people who kick balls. I don't think that they can do that. And by the way, Card Capture Sakura came out around the same time that Pokemon did. I think the manga's been around for a little bit longer, but the problem is, Card Capture Sakura has been done for, I don't know, 2 decades? And then all of a sudden, this guy comes up. Seems very suspicious there, Pokemon Company. At the same time, bunny eared people with long, spiky hair isn't a new thing. There was somebody in Yu Yu Hakusho that did it. There was somebody in Tenchi Muyo. Big ears, cat ears, spiky hair. It's nothing new. Now, what you're going to find in this video is mainly the stuff that I found from anime. I went back into the archives and looked at the art for the majority of every anime going back to 1917. And quite frankly, I found out that Japan loves to anthropomorphize everything. Carrots, sunflowers. Here's some black and white footage from I don't know when. Here's some black and white footage. And this Pokemon here, wait, that's not a Pokemon, but it's strangely exactly like a Slugoo. Now, I do believe that Slugoo came out during black and white, but it still looks exactly the same as this. If you're gonna stretch and say that Wooloo looks like this pal, then Wooloo looks like this guy, the stray sheep. There's also quite an interesting thing about the Eevee line. You could probably say that the Eevee line is another one of the more iconic Pokemon in the entire series. Absolutely adorable. Everybody loves it. And you have so many different variants of the evolution. Did you know that this is probably based off of a character from the anime Gene Diver? Kind of makes sense that the Gene Pokemon comes from an anime called Gene Diver. Also, in the same era, we had another anime, or it could be the same one. I don't really remember. Mana is still blocking my memory a little bit. But here's a Pokemon. That's not Pokemon. That was back in the 80s. Kind of looks familiar now, doesn't it? And let's go back to card captures for a second, because card captures had an Espeon and an Articuno. And speaking about Articuno, here's another one. Card capture Sakura also had this Mew guy, or at least some weird Cheshire Cat demented version of a Mew, but it's similar enough. I don't know if this guy really looks like anybody, but I think it's like it almost looks like a Meloetta. Not really. I don't know. I kind of stretching this one, but I mean it's similar enough that I wanted to note it. It's all from card captures. So who is copying who? Going back to Inuyasha, I also see a couple similarities between this character and Muck, this character and Slazzle, and this character and Incineroar. I could be wrong about that one, but I'm certainly not wrong about Entei being a Rapidash. And whatever this creature is being a Volcarona. And whatever this creature is being Spidops. I also feel like this guy kind of looks like Zygarde, but again, that's kind of pushing it. But at the same time, I think that the internet really wants to push on the fact that this pal looks like this Pokemon. And I want to say that this Pokemon looks like a grown up version of this Digimon, or it's a miscoloration of this Digimon. Again, I could be wrong, but the similarities are there. And interestingly enough, this Leviamon is almost exactly Skeledirge. And going back to some of our favorite starters, you have Incineroar, who took all of its inspiration from Tiger Mask. Other random Pokemon, you also have Poltergeist, and Sinistea, who are just Chip and Mrs. Potts. Which also leads me to believe that Lipwick was based off of this candle. What was the candle's name again? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. One of these two Pokemon has to be based off of Palmon. And if this Pokemon ain't compared to Lilymon, I don't know. And obviously, in this particular case, even though Digimon came out many years ago, Lilymon was back in season 1. This Pokemon is like season 5. Now, the interesting thing about Digimon is it actually expanded its decks. It has, I believe, like 11,000 different entries. I'm sure I could probably cherry pick a ton of them that look like Pokemon just because, but I don't really know exactly when all these Pokemon showed up. But I could probably argue that where Garurumon came before Lucario. And if you're going to say that Pokemon has a monopoly on werewolves, then Digimon definitely has to sue because they got there first. But they didn't get there first. These guys did. I think that's a Scraggy. Maybe they took this cat female creature and based Sneasel after it. If not, Weasel out the evolution. Certainly looks similar enough. You have a shiny Litleo. Oh no, actually, it's Japan's version of Simba. And then you have Ninetales and Ninetales and Ninetales. Actually, all of these are from the same anime, and it's not Pokemon. Here's an interesting one that kind of reminded me of Mr. Mime. Probably not, but it reminded me of. Here's a golem in black and white. Here's a Heracross that was a mecha. This was made in 1970. these three characters. I have a whole series based off them, and I'm pretty sure that these three are the basis for the loyal trio in the Teal Mask. Okie dokie, Monkey Dory, and Fezzidempity? I don't know how to pronounce that name. Here's an Electabuzz, here's a fat cat, and here's a Psyduck that has been color changed. Even some of the Pikachu clones have been carbon copied from other series. This one I found rather interesting because I can only find this image on Google when I searched up this anime title, but it's very strange because it looks almost exactly like a Sandy Gast. A crazy amount similar to Sandy Gas. Now they just slapped on some googly eyes and called it good. There's only so many ways that you can draw a doggy. There's only so many ways that you can draw a mole. And it just so happens that mole Pokemon look just like a mole Digimon from season 2 and looks like this mole here. Here's a penguin Pokemon. Here's a penguin pal. Here's a penguin that's very similar to both that was made in like the 80s. Metagross is probably one of my favorite Pokemon. It's in my main team. But you can't tell me that Metagross doesn't look like a Tachikoma. It's like backside taken off. Like, take this Tachikoma and take this meteorite from a mecha anime back in the 80s and put them together, and you got yourself Metagross. Not to say that Metagross is not a fantastic design, just that it has its similar points somewhere else. Here's an Amora or an Aurorus standing in front of a Toucanon. But the Aurorus is actually some sort of dragon mermaid thing, and it's pink. There are so many different types that I've found throughout my archive. I'm not sure if I want to talk about every single one. Like Ysogaleo looking like a Zoid, Lunala looking like something from Final Fantasy X. Like I hope that you are seeing my point, that your argument that Pokemon is infallible and has done no wrong is a lie that you're telling yourself because Pokemon is above all your nostalgic childhood. And Palworld, how dare you destroy my childhood with guns and gadgets and animal cruelty? I think that that's missing the point of Palworld. Palworld is doing the exact same thing that the majority of the anime industry, the majority of gaming industry, and quite honestly, the majority of entertainment in general do. Every kung fu flick looks exactly like or takes inspiration from the old Bruce Lee films. Probably from here on forward, most, if not all, shoot 'em up genre movies are going to be based off of John Wick. And a lot of fantasy wizardry stuff is going to be based off of Harry Potter. It's called honoring your predecessors. You make a character that looks similar in design, similar in style, but just enough to kind of pass by to say, hey guys, I'm here. I think I can do something new here. And a Pokemon company could get their head out of their asses just long enough to realize Palworld has a point, a 20 million sales point, that the Mon genre is not dead and needs to stop being beaten like a dead horse that Pokemon companies turned it out to be. Let's be honest, Pokemon games have been exactly the same their entire career. And I think it's time for a shakeup. Pokemon is the most profitable franchise in the world. So much so that its last 5 games have outcompeted the last decade and a half of Zelda. Keep that in mind when you're telling Pokemon to really hammer down on Palworld because you think Palworld is the one who's done wrong. But time and time and time and time and time and time and time again, I see Pokemon stealing from their predecessors and giving an homage to them. But when Palworld does it, they aren't allowed. And that bothers me because it's that same old saying, rules for thee and not for me. You are not allowed to do these things, but I am. And so I hope that when Nintendo and Pokemon Company go into court, Palworld sees these things and shoves it in their faces. Because Pokemon needs to take a step back and rethink its own values. Because the crap games that it's been giving out, and mind you, I've had hundreds of hours in Pokemon Violet, and I love it, but it still has a lot of glaring issues. Pokemon Company needs to go back to the drawing board. It needs to learn from these mistakes. Stop letting go of everything that you've done in the past to make a completely new thing. Bring back Mega Evolutions. Expand on them. Bring back Z moves. Expand on them. We have so many Pokemon right now. Just expand on them. You don't have to completely reiterate every single game, but you have so much material behind you that you're squandering. Many of the new evolutions, many of the new forms, many of the redesigns of old shit, it's a dip in the bucket. How about one of my favorite Pokemon, Kabutops? Nobody likes Kabutops. Really? I really, really, really wish Kabutops could be somewhat competitive. I mean, Aerodactyl got his Mega Evolution. Can I get one for Kabutops? This is a badass Pokemon. Palworld, give me a knockoff of Kabutops so I can ride this guy. Just running around, slashing my swords. Be amazing. Thank you all so much for watching my rants. Hopefully it was somewhat entertaining. I'm probably a little bit long-winded, but c'est la vie, I suppose. I have nothing better to do here, so I guess you get to hear all my ranting. Share this video around about people who might just get really pissed off because they don't want to hear it. And share it with somebody who might just get a laugh because I'm sure all those Palworld friends of yours, I think it's funny to see that Pokemon's done the same thing. Don't forget to subscribe because this is my first video. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.